Welcome to Pharmative Live. I'm your host, Dr. James Partyka. I'm a clinical pharmacist, research scientist, and the founder of Pharmative.com. And we are coming to you live from our PNN Media Digital Recording Studios right here in Palm Springs, California. And this is our opportunity to have an interactive section to discuss with you various healthcare topics in order to educate ourselves and have informed decisions with our healthcare teams, our doctors, our nurses, and our pharmacists. And this is Pharmative Live. And I always like to say we come live to you on Sunday mornings at 10:55 a.m. Pacific Coast time. So I always say, eat some pancakes, pray, say a few prayers, and then come and love Pharmative Live here at 10:55 a.m. every week. It's, again, our opportunity to have an interactive session, so please feel free to text your messages now, or you can send your questions ahead of time to info@pharmative.com. Today we're going to be talking about how best can we prevent major life-threatening drug interactions from occurring to yourself or to any one of your loved ones. And we're going to use a very informative healthcare resource tool, which is located at drugs.com, and that's provided to you by the FDA, but it's also available on our PNN Plus Health mobile app. So again, Pharmative Live is sponsored by PNN Plus Health mobile app and PNN Media Group here in Palm Springs, California. So pharmacists and pharmacologists study medications for about 6 to 10 college years in various aspects of it, from pharmacognosy, which is finding medications in nature to benefit you, to pharmacodynamics, which is really studying how medications work in your body and how they help prevent and cure disease, as well as pharmacokinetics. And basically, you can kind of ascertain what pharmacokinetics is by its name. It's basically studying the motion of drugs in your body. And there are 4 major characteristics which determine how a medicine distributes in your body. The first and foremost is absorption. So when you take a medication orally, how well is it absorbed in your intestine to your bloodstream? That's absorption. And that's also measured by a metric term we call bioavailability. Is it 90% absorbed into your bloodstream? Is it 75% absorbed into your bloodstream? And so forth. That's absorption. And there are many things that can interfere with the absorptions of drugs in your body, and we're going to discuss that in a little bit more detail later on. The second parameter would be distribution. How well does the drug distribute into the body, through the bloodstream, to the tissues, to the sites of disease, such as an abscess, or in the case of cancer, a tumor. How well does the blood distribute into the brain? And this is determined by a number of different characteristics of the medicine, how well it binds to proteins within the bloodstream, how lipophilic does it characteristics have to allow it to penetrate the blood-brain barrier into the brain, and so forth. The third would be metabolism. How is the drug actually degraded within your bloodstream. And sometimes actually medicines are given to you as a prodrug, and they actually go to an organ like the liver, and it is actually metabolized into its active form. And other times it's degraded into inactive metabolites and excreted in other ways. So metabolism. And most drugs which are absorbed orally have what they call a first pass effect, which is immediately goes to the liver, and the liver metabolizes the drug, and then it's distributed to the rest of the body after that first pass effect. And then finally is the elimination. How is the drug eliminated from the body? Sometimes it's through the bile tract. Sometimes it is through your kidneys. Sometimes it's the drug of the parent drug of the drug that you have been administered, and sometimes it's metabolites and so forth. And those four characteristics, the absorption, the distribution, the metabolism, and the excretion, determine how the drug is going to be distributed throughout your body, how it's going to get to the site of action it needs to exert its effect. So we talked about pharmacokinetics. So the second thing is pharmacodynamics, the drug interacting with the site where it needs to exert an effect. That could be at a receptor level. That can actually be the drug engulfed into the cell, where there's a site of action actually within the cell that it exerts its effect. And that all determines the properties of the medicine that you're taking. And pharmacists and pharmacologists study this in college for about 6 to 10 years, and they specialize in different aspects, from oncology to pediatrics, to nuclear pharmacy, to infectious disease, cardiology, and so forth. So many different types of pharmacists and pharmacologists, and they spend many, many years understanding how these drugs interact in your body, but interact with other things as well. So we're going to be discussing today very briefly how to prevent major drug interactions that can be life-threatening, and simple tools that you can do today to minimize that, not only for yourself, but also for your family and your loved ones. All right, so I'm going to start off by talking about the different types of drug interactions. You can have drug-to-drug interactions. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that the presence of one drug affects the pharmacologic effects of the other drug. And that can be in a beneficial way, or it can be in a negative way. Oftentimes when people refer to drug interactions, we're really kind of thinking about it in a negative way, that it can cause an additional side effect, or it can worsen the side effect of a drug. So again, it's actually a simple concept. It's really when you're taking more than one drug, and one drug affects the pharmacological effects of the other drug. Okay, and that can happen in many different ways, by affecting what we talked about with regards to absorption, the distribution of the drug, the metabolism of the drug, or the excretion of the drug. All right, it can also affect the pharmacodynamic effect, which is the actual pharmacological effect that we're looking at the site of disease from occurring appropriately. So that's a drug-to-drug interaction. But it's actually even broader than that. We can have drug-to-food interactions. A common example will be grapefruit juice. Grapefruit juice actually inhibits metabolic enzymes in your liver, and that can increase the amounts of certain types of drugs that are cleared by those enzymes actually in the body, and can cause severe side effects. It can also be a drug to herb or drug to vitamin C effect. And that can have this same kind of concept. The presence of one thing alters the side effect profile or the beneficial profile of the other drug. So I hope I made that kind of clear. It's much more complicated than that, but that's what you really need to know. So let's go over some common examples, and I think that'll give you a better idea of what we're talking about here. Say, for example, you're taking aspirin over the counter for, let's say, for arthritis. And it works very well for you because it decreases the pain and inflammation. And we've discussed in previous episodes of Pharmative Live that aspirin also has an antiplatelet effect, okay? That it actually acetylates the platelets and hinders their ability to clot. So it's a blood thinner. And many people take small dose aspirin, right, to decrease your ability of your platelets to clot. So if you were to take aspirin with another drug which affects your clotting system, such as warfarin, the brand name is Coumadin. It's a very commonly prescribed anticoagulant. You could see that the two drugs would extremely increase more than additive effect, but a synergistic effect of increasing your chances of bleeding, and some bleeds can be life-threatening. So that would be an example of aspirin having a drug interaction with the drug called Coumadin, another commonly prescribed inhibitor of clot factors called Equinus. Is another drug that you would also want to minimize your risk. How would we do that? By prescribing something other than aspirin. So a drug like ibuprofen or a drug like acetaminophen, Tylenol, would be a better alternative to minimize that drug interaction ever from occurring. So that's a common example. Another example would be combining an opioid with an anti-anxiety drug like Ativan or Xanax. And when you combine opioids, the example here would be Vicodin, which is hydroxycodone with acetaminophen, plus an anti-anxiety medicine like Ativan or Xanax. They have an increased effect of respiratory depression, and you can stop breathing, and you can actually die. So it's something that is a very severe life-threatening interaction. And an example of how to deal with this would be to eliminate one of those classes of drugs. So use something else to control the pain and eliminate the opioid, or use something else to control the anxiety and eliminate the benzodiazepine, and minimize ever that drug-to-drug interaction ever occurring. When those medicines are used, they should be used in a hospital environment that is closely monitoring patients with regards to the respiratory rate. Another example would be a drug-to-food interaction. We talked about already grapefruit juice. It inhibits certain enzymes located in the liver, which prevents the metabolism of certain types of drugs. So a commonly prescribed class of drugs called statins, you may or may not be familiar with them, but they're oftentimes used like lovastatin to lower cholesterol levels. Grapefruit juice actually inhibits the clearance of statin drugs, which increases your risk to developing certain types of side effects like muscle pain and a severe complication called rhabdomyolysis. So a way that we would avoid a drug-food interaction like that is just do not eat or drink grapefruit juice, and be aware that you should not be taking the two in combination with each other. Okay, I have one more example, which is an example of a drug-to-disease interaction. You have a problem with stuffiness, nasal congestion, and you want to take a decongestant, but you also have a high blood pressure problem, and your blood pressure is not quite controlled right now, so it's already high. We know if we take drugs like Sudafed, the generic name is pseudoephedrine, or other types of drugs that are similar called phenylephrine, which are available over the counter or through purchase through a pharmacist. Those medications are stimulants and increase blood pressure. So if you already have really high blood pressure and you're taking another medication on top of it, you're going to exacerbate the blood pressure, and it can get as high as becoming emergent. So we wouldn't want you to take drugs like Sudafed if you have uncontrolled hypertension. And again, when in doubt, ask your pharmacist if this is an appropriate medication for you. Now, a way around that would be just don't take those stimulant decongestants and take something topical. Like, for example, a steroid, a topical steroid that can reduce the inflammation, especially if it's associated with allergic rhinitis, which is seasonal, or even topical saline that can help wash out your nasal passages. And you're not taking a medication systemically, which would exacerbate your hypertension. All right, now you're going to have some homework to do today. One is you can go to the website by the FDA called drugs.com, and it has every single drug approved by the FDA. And you can look up not only dosages but side effects as well, but it has a drug interactions checker. There are so many drug-to-drug interactions out there that's impossible for one human person to catch all of them. And that's why we have to rely on computers to process it and then give us the information so that we can interpret them clinically for you. And you can do this yourself as well. You can also download our free of charge PNN Plus Health mobile app, either at your Android or Apple stores. And there's a tab when you open up the application called Virtual Pharmacy, and it streams in much of the information from the FDA, as I told you before, and has the drug interactions checker there. Now, the first step would be everyone needs to have a healthcare journal. As you get older, and as unfortunately you have more health problems, you're on more medications. And it's really important to keep a healthcare journal with a list of your current medications, your dosages, and how often you take them, and then a list of the medications you take as needed, like, for example, ibuprofen or Tylenol, and so forth. List out whatever drug allergies you may or may not have, or whatever medications you don't tolerate well. And then in that healthcare journal, it's also important to keep track of your tests and your procedures over time. You know, if you had a CAT scan at a certain time for a particular reason, when that was, the date, and what the result was. And then if you're ever admitted unexpectedly to a hospital, or you change doctors, or you have a healthcare event that occurs, you have that journal with you. It can be kept on your phone or a hard copy in writing. Your loved ones should know where that is so they can transfer that information if you're admitted to the hospital or the emergency room, and they'll have a complete list of your current medications. Now you're going to take that list and you're going to enter it into the drug interaction tracker. And again, this is very easy to use and it's very easy to read. And you're just going to go into your PNN Plus Health app, and you're going to press Virtual Pharmacy, and then you're going to press Interaction Checker. You're going to enter your medications. You can enter up to 9 medications, including your over-the-counter medications. And then you're going to say, press for check drug interactions. And what you're going to look for are the major drug interactions first. And you're going to read what those drug interactions are. And some of them may be some of the examples that I gave to you already. And again, if you're able to enter the over-the-counter medications you use as well. And then you're going to go to the prescriber, your healthcare team, or your pharmacist, and discuss alternatives on how to deal with this particular drug interaction. Again, it may be best to just switch from one medicine to a reasonable alternative, or in some cases, it may be best just to eliminate something from your diet, or also scheduling the medications at different times in the day can deal with certain types of drug-to-food interactions, drug-to-drug interactions. There are ways of managing all of this, and it's better to prevent this from happening than for these drug interactions to ever occur, because they are life-threatening at times. Again, it's something simple and easy for you to do. It's something more common than not. There's so many people that are taking over-the-counter medications, and the prescribers are not aware of it. Now, in addition to what we've just talked about, write down your medications, use the drug interactions tracker at the checker tracker at the FDA website. Discuss them with the prescriber as well as with your clinical pharmacist on how to manage them. You're going to do all of this on a regular basis. Anytime there's a major change in your medical condition or a major change in your medications, you're going to do this routinely on an everyday basis, again, because it's easier to prevent these interactions from occurring than from them not to occur. And the expert, and I keep telling this to all of you during this time, is the experts out there are the pharmacologists and the clinical pharmacists who have been studying medications for 6 to 10 years and have a good understanding of it, of all of this, the absorption, the distribution, the metabolism, and the excretion of medications that can interact not only with other medications, but can interact with food, beverages, herbs, vitamins, and so forth. And again, you have access to a pharmacist generally 24/7 in most areas of the country, and then you can easily get in touch with your prescribers as well to discuss alternative ways of preventing. The bottom line is we want to be proactive, and we want to prevent these medication drug interactions from ever occurring. Oftentimes you can take these medications and be perfectly fine for a period of time. That does not mean that it won't occur in the near future. And that's an unknown factor that best way to deal with it is being proactive and being preventative from them ever occurring. So that's our session today. Hi, Mary. Hi, Peter out there, Stephen, Denise, and Robert, Brian as well. I thank you for listening to Pharmative Live and our brief session today on drug-to-drug interactions. All of our Pharmative Live episodes are recorded and available not only on Pharmative.com, but also available on our website at Pharmative on YouTube as well. So you'll be able to replay them for you as well. And again, I'm going to sign off by saying stay healthy, because it's easier to prevent disease than to treat disease. And information is important to empower yourselves and educate yourselves so that you can have informed decisions with your healthcare team, with your prescribers and your pharmacists on how best to manage medications and so forth to you. It's not as uncommon as you think it is. These drug interactions occur sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, and the best way to manage them is to be proactive and write them down in your healthcare journal. So I'll see you next week, and in the meantime, stay healthy.